Defenders.
What's going on, guys? Yash Talalekar back here with another episode on the Winning Browns podcast alongside Akhilesh Srivatsa. Season 3, episode 35. This is our third year now doing the Winning Browns podcast and our first episode into the new 2025 NFL year. And what
Yeah.
a start to the NFL season. It has been
Talk
some
about it, baby.
thrilling games all over the place and some very intriguing storylines. But we got a great episode ahead for you guys today. First off, we'll start off talking about some of the biggest headlines of the last 2 weeks. And from
hmm
there, we'll move on into some intriguing topics that have come about because of certain storylines over the last 3 weeks.
Sure.
But Akilesh, do you have anything to start off as far as talking about these last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a fire start to the season, right? I mean, this is really what it is. Football is back in action. Guys are getting injured left and right. Guys are getting on the field left and right. But at the end of the day, the real deal is this. I mean, when you talk about big highlights for me, I mean, I really only took two highlights. Number one was how insanely I'm impressed with the Chargers. I do have to say that genuinely. People have been down talking Justin Herbert for ages together. Is he a top 10 quarterback? CJ Stroud should be ahead of him. He's not deserving of a top 10. He's never won a playoff game, all these hooplas. And he's come in here. He's beat Patrick Mahomes. He's beat the Raiders, who, if I'm being completely honest, are 10 times better than what I am expected them to be. The way they played week one against the Pats and the Chargers, I mean, look, offensively, they were, or let me say this, defensively, we were, just a matchup nightmare for them. But at the end of the day, Geno balled out against the Pats in game
Mhm.
one. I mean, the throws that he was making were accurate, were deep balls. He wasn't, one of the things that I think marks a great quarterback is when you have a certain design route concept, the kind of average quarterbacks are going to go in for those that are going to be that 10-yard route or that 15-yard route. Rarely are those going to go for 20-yard route if it's in that route concept. And he's daring enough to go for it. And he's been successful enough. Um, until you really talked about them, I really never saw them as a threat. But Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Ashton Genty, who, I mean, I kind of predicted he wouldn't be a pop-off season, and it is looking like that right now. He hasn't been anything extraordinary, but he is a young running back. Omarion Hampton, I mean, I can talk about him not being enough of that spark, right? But it's 2 games. It's too early to say. So for me, the Chargers, the way they've defensively played, the way they've been attacking from a defensive standpoint, obviously we lost Khalil Mack, but that didn't really do anything to us. Justin Herbert has been balling out, and he's been proving people wrong week by week. So that's
It's like
number
the
one
MVP
takeaway for me.
frontrunner.
At this point right now, I mean, for me, the way Josh Allen's played, I mean, I think he's right now the MVP frontrunner personally, but that's a different topic for another day. For me, really, the second highlight for me over the past couple of weeks has been Micah Parsons. I mean,
Yeah.
I really have to say this. This officially is the closest version I've ever seen to an LT. The way Micah's playing right now is the closest version I've ever seen. I mean, me and Yash were going texting on this topic, and he was referring to the old 49ers days with Jim Harbaugh, the way Micah Parsons and that defensive line is playing. I think it's better. Because the reason why I say that is no one's stopping him. I mean, think about this. First, week one, arguably against the best right tackle, left tackle, whatever, wherever you want to put him, Penei Sewell. I've never seen Penei Sewell be looked that bad in his entire career. Forget a
Mhm.
rookie who played against Aaron Donald and got, molested by him, honestly. Over here, this guy got absolutely crushed. I did not see one play where Penei Sewell won the battle. I mean, he
Mhm.
was again and again beat. This is one of the best tackles this league might have ever seen from a talent standpoint. And Micah Parsons putting him down in the dirt every single time. Then you look at the next week against Lermy Tunsil, a veteran who knows how this works. I mean, we were talking about the Commanders in a high right from an offensive standpoint because Lermy Tunsil was signed. Jaden Daniels was absolutely massacred when it comes to the offensive line. That offensive line was absolutely teared apart. But over all of that, the best team in the league is the Green Bay Packers. Let's not get it wrong. The
Yeah.
way they've been playing, they're so balanced. They're so for me, Yash. The one thing I've noticed in my life when it comes to success, forget football, forget sports in life. really it is balance. Balancing your time, making
Yeah.
sure you have fun, but you're doing the work at the same time. When you're doing your work, you're not distracted by anything else. You're focused on your work. You get distracted when you have that time to be distracted. When you're in football, you're in that zone. The moment you're out of football, you're not in that zone. It's balance. The
Like
way this
Thanos
team is
said,
playing,
like Thanos said, balance is everything in life.
it really is. I
Yeah.
mean, the world is a better place. God, do we know it after the past couple of weeks? The world is a better place when there is balance, right?
Yeah.
You talk about the human body. I mean, homeostasis and all this stuff. It's balance at the end of the day that's going to keep our body in a good shape. That's what this Green Bay Packers overall team is. The offense. I mean, you talk about an RPO system. I mean, I know you personally have not been the greatest fan of Matt LaFleur. I can
Hmm.
certainly say Stephen A. Smith has been a unnecessary hater on LaFleur.
Yeah.
I've been one of the biggest supporters of him from day one, and I'll stand by that. I mean, he's allowing this RPO to be executed to a T. I mean, for we can talk about 20 like last week the scoreboard doesn't exactly match up with what you saw. If you saw the highlights, the defensive line was absolutely crushing the offensive line on every single end. Their offense is slowly yet effective. I mean, I don't think there's a better team than the Green Bay Packers. That was my highlight from week 1 and 2. We'll see how the preseason progresses, but I don't think you're finding a better team than the Green Bay Packers right now.
Yeah, as far as your two things, I'll just briefly go over it. The Chargers Raiders game you nailed on the dot. The only thing I'll say as far as Ashton Genty is there should have, I mean, we both kind of talked about this, the fact that as far as Genty goes, I think I was a little higher than you on how Genty would perform
For sure.
year one without a doubt. But one thing we should take in consideration is this Raiders offensive line is not very good. And against the Chargers defense, what you're talking about when it comes to this overall Chargers team, yeah, this Chargers team really kind of showed the improvements that a lot of their teams in the division have to, whether that's the Chiefs or the Raiders.
Yeah.
As far as the Green Bay Packers
0
go,
and 2.
yeah,
0 and 2. I mean, talk about a highlight. 0 and 2 Chiefs. I mean, it's been 10 years since that's more than 10 years since that's been said, but I called it. It made sense.
as far as the Green Bay Packers go, your comparison to LT is not far-fetched. I'm not going to really speak on that because I want to just see more in this Packers team. What I will say is
Okay,
that
fair.
this scheme for Micah Parsons, for given the fact especially that he got traded a week before the season, the
Yeah.
way they're
That's
utilizing him,
you know what it is, Yash? He's playing so furious.
exactly. I was about to say that.
It
I'll give another word, relentless. His motor is so, and we've seen this
furious
with the Cowboys,
relentlessness.
but this man is playing right now with like he's playing with a different type of energy than I've ever seen him before. And the only thing I can really
Talk about it.
compare this to is like Khalil Mack when he got traded from the Bears or from the Raiders to the Bears.
Week 1 against the
Yeah,
Rodgers. That first game I've probably ever watched the highlights of.
it's one of the
Honestly.
greatest defensive performances for a debut performance for a new team I've ever seen. Probably maybe the greatest, honestly, for a defensive player. But the thing is, I mean, Micah Parsons, he fits so well with this Packers team, and there were concerns as to how they'd kind of utilize him because of his unique skill set, how the
Yeah.
Packers would move around certain players. He's just a do-it-all guy at the end of the day. That's
Yeah.
exactly what the Packers needed, and their front seven is just elite. What you're talking about with Jaden Daniels, I think we both had our concern about this Washington team because Jaden Daniels is really the only true elite offensive piece on this team. Terry McLaurin is great, but he's not the elite tier of the Jamar Chase or the Justin Jefferson type receiver.
Yeah.
And their offensive line, I mean, they got Laramie Tunsil, but that's it on their offensive line. Sam Cosmi's pretty good, but he's not great, right?
Sure.
This Packers team made them look like the Panthers were a few years ago with their offensive line. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how bad the Washington looked. And I think in a way, it also shows the question marks that you have about Washington and the Lions. But
Hmm.
good teams always show the weaknesses at such a
Critical
resounding,
time.
no, not just a critical, but in such a resounding way that it makes
I
you
see.
so much more concerning. We saw with the Lions the week after they ended up getting crushed by the Packers, they put a 52 on a Bears front seven.
Exactly.
Pretty good, right?
Exactly. Pretty
So
good.
a
That's
Bears.
52 points, man. In an NFL football game, 52 points is insane. Pretty good.
No, no, no. I said the Bears front seven. That's pretty good,
Oh,
right? So the Lions, I mean, the fact that they put up 52, I mean, that if anything just goes to show me how much good, better the Packers are. Like that's how
yeah.
good we're talking. And as far as their offense goes, this is the best iteration I've seen of Matt LaFleur's play calling ever. The thing that impresses me about him is he continues to improve
Oh,
every
oh
time.
no.
And the things that I had problems with him around Aaron Rodgers, as far as his stubbornness to when to run the ball and whatnot, I think he's learned. Having a guy like Josh Jacobs and knowing how to utilize him, he's made Josh Jacobs take his game to a whole new level. And I think having a guy in the past like Aaron Jones helped him, especially once Aaron Jones started to diminish in quality. Aaron Jones is still a great running back,
Yeah.
but to
He's not the
go
same, but he's still great.
exactly, exactly. So when you have a guy like Aaron Jones and you know that, he's starting to fall apart and utilize him in new ways, that's the mark of a great offensive play caller and a great coach. And that's what I think has really changed this Packers offense even better. And we're seeing with guys like Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, Christian Watson,
Talk
Jaden
about
Reed,
it.
Romeo Doubs. All of them are having sensational starts to the season. And
We'll
Jordan Love
see.
goes without saying. So
I do.
in
I
this,
do think if I vaguely remember, one of the players did get injured. Number 11, I believe, got injured on some sort of
yeah,
play.
Jaden Reed, he did break his collarbone. Yeah.
So
So
I think
he's going to be out
he's
for the next eight
out for the
weeks.
season.
Not for the season,
Uh,
for just the next 8 weeks.
is it okay?
Yeah.
Um, Another important injuries that we kind of had to account to. Khalil Mack, we talked about. Joe Burrow is definitely an injury
Joe
that
Burrow is
is
huge.
big
Yeah.
time. I mean, you talk about missing what 2 months nearly, but at the same time, if whoever watches ESPN, Mad Dog Rousseau was there on every Wednesday. Usually, he is a let's just say he is a guy who's known for his funny takes that are very, very efficient when it comes to making a lot more money for ESPN, but not exactly smart when it comes to his bets. Because if you know him, I don't know if he's ever won one in his life. When it comes to
Might have been the 60s. Not
Might have been
anymore.
in the 60s. Yeah, there was one take that he went on a horse. You know that one horse one where he said Stephen A was about 15. He probably jumped over,
Yeah.
put the bet on the horse.
Yeah.
Some famous horse. I don't do sports betting or
I
all the
think it was
horse
a, it
racing
was
stuff.
it
So
was a it was a Kentucky Derby. What was his name? Secretariat. The horse.
Secretariat.
Yeah.
Yes, Secretariat. Yeah, exactly. That guy. Probably won that one, but we'll see. So the thing is, when it comes to what Mad Dog said, I don't know if it was Mad Dog or maybe Chris Canty, one of those people who absolutely cannot give a good take when it comes to a quarterback. He had an interesting point. He said, "Look, the way he played last week, the backup played. I don't remember his name,
Jake
unfortunately.
Browning.
Jake Browning, right? The way he played last week. I mean, look, he made some interceptions, but he made some plays too. Let's not act as though he was a scrub quarterback who wasn't good for anything, right? He played a pretty good game against a talented defense. Not exactly a good defense, but a talented defense. He did make the plays that were necessary. He does have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Now, obviously, the point is Joe Burrow has been the most hit quarterback of any quarterback over the duration of however long he's been in the league. He's been sacked the most, injured the most from a expensive standpoint, right? Etc. So Browning's gonna get the same treatment. It's not gonna change. But I do feel he can execute to such a level that if Joe Burrow comes back, Burrow wins the next 3 games, right, to end off the season, they could make the playoffs. Honestly, I feel Chase Browning could take this team to a 7-7 record. They are 2-0. He could take them to a 7-7 record. You put in Joe Burrow, that's 3 games. That's if you look at the end of the season, if I'm not wrong. That is their easier part when it comes to the season, if I'm not wrong.
Correct. Very much. Their middle part. The problem is Jake Browning is obviously a much inferior quarterback to Joe Burrow, and their
Right.
schedule from I think like week 5 to week 10 is rough, like incredibly
Yeah,
rough.
they got the Lions, Packers, Steelers, Jets, Bears, and then they go back to the Steelers, right? So the next 6 weeks they got possible, mostly possible playoff contenders. Then you look at they got then you got Patriots 1 week, and then immediately you got the Ravens, Bills, and then Ravens again,
Correct.
right? So in that type of thing, Yash, even if they go, let's say they go 6-8, right?
Hmm.
Let's say they go 6-8 to that point. Then you got the Dolphins, the Cardinals, the Browns. Dolphins, they're a calamity. I do think there's going to be head coach fired within week 6.
I agree. Yeah. That
As
Dolphins team
as
looks bad. I mean, Tua. I mean, I've been more of one of the bigger advocates of Tua
I've been a
over the
hater of
last.
Tua my entire life,
Here's
and
the thing,
I've
though.
been right.
Here's the thing. Like, I don't think Tua is this bad, but he got. I mean, with this Dolphins team, I mean, something needs to change like ASAP with this Dolphins team. This is the worst iteration we've seen of the Dolphins. I wouldn't even say this team is probably worse than the 2019 Dolphins team that ended up still winning. I think it was 5 games. This Dolphins team reminds me of what we were seeing in the late 2000s when they had no quarterback. They just drafted Chad Henne in the second round. I mean,
Yeah.
this is how bad the Dolphins. They have not been this bad in over 15 years.
But you know what it is, Yash? If you look at the scoreboard, you're saying they're not too bad.
Hmm.
But when you look at the play,
Exactly.
Chad made a great point. Ochocinco on Shannon Sharp's podcast. He made a great point. You halftime are in the game. You are playing against the Bills and you're doing a really good job defensively. You're doing a good job offensively. You're going till the third quarter. I mean, Chad Ochocinco explained it like this: Pee wee football stuff. If you get the ball and you look towards the where you want to throw it, the linebackers and everybody else are going to go towards where your eyes are looking. You don't look to where you throw. You look away and then know where the space is going to be and then execute quick. I mean,
Speaking
it's
speaking of the
just
Dolphins, before we do transition, I would be remiss with if I didn't mention this, and this was kind of the big one, big takeaway I had as far as the season, the start to the season goes. For me, the big storyline is Daniel Jones for the Indianapolis Colts.
yeah. Talk about him.
And
Talk
we're,
about him.
I mean, we're talking about over the last few years
Resurgence, baby.
a bunch of different quarterbacks as far as having, like you just said, a resurgence. I've never, I think I think most people can kind of test to this. I've never been particularly the biggest Daniel Jones fan, but I haven't also been the biggest Daniel Jones hater, right? I do think he's a very overhated quarterback, and I do think he has shown potential to be a starting quarterback at this time. Now, am I saying that this is going to lead to him becoming a franchise quarterback like Baker Mayfield? No, it's too early to say as it is, but he has shown to be really good in the first 2 weeks. What I am saying though is if there's a team that could give him the opportunity, it's the Indianapolis Colts. And I don't think we would have said that earlier on. Akilish can kind of bring back his fandom towards Shane Steichen over the past few years. But the thing
Yeah.
is, what really impresses me is really how well Shane Steichen has let Daniel Jones just be Daniel Jones. And I can bring up some statistics here to kind of give um, a little bit of analysis on Daniel Jones
Sure.
and what has he has done. Daniel Jones is first in yards per attempt. He's 12th in air yards per attempt. And then we can go further down as far as yards after catch. Hold up, give me one sec.
When Yash, before Yash gets those stats, you guys know I'm not a statistician here, but one thing I was, just surprised by. I was surprised is really the lowest term to keep it, but in NFL history, there's never been a team that won both games and didn't punt once.
Hmm.
Let me say that again. A team that won both games to start off their NFL season and didn't punt once. That's Shane Steichen for you guys. I mean, look, you can critique the, last week saying, oh, they got lucky against the Broncos. By the way, the Broncos defense, are you joking?
Yeah.
They looked horrible against the Colts. 152 yards for Jonathan Taylor. Daniel Jones is racking up nearly 300, 2 touchdowns,
And
hasn't
this
thrown
is
an interception, and
and this
he's been lethal. But again, it's that topic we went back to, Yash, which is these quarterbacks suffer, but they learn so much from the suffering that when they get put back in, you got to remember Daniel Jones was cut from the Giants, went to the Vikings. By the way, let's just not forget the quarterback whisperer
Kevin
of
O'Connell.
anybody,
Yeah.
right? Goes from there, and then he comes to Shane Steichen, who himself is a genius from an offensive standpoint, and he
Well,
he
that's the thing. I would like to mention this because we can. not talk about the fact that we were looking at Shane Steichen last year and criticize him on his coaching ability, on his ability to handle Anthony Richardson as far as the development process goes. But the thing is, like you were talking about this Denver Broncos team, the two things that stand out to me are number one, the utilization of Tyler Warren, right? The biggest weakness for the Broncos is the fact that they don't have great linebackers, if anything, in their what's it called? In their linebacker room. Dre Greenlaw is good, but he's still recovering from that Achilles injury he had in the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Sure.
He's not the same type of explosiveness. But when you look at this team, they're great as far as yards after catch. And this is what helps Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones hasn't particularly been, for a guy who's tall, big arm, that type of thing. He's never been known for his deep ball accuracy. What he has been known for is his ability on first read throws to get outside the pocket and make short and intermediate throws. And we have seen that as far as number one, we can talk about the fact that he has his receiving room has averaged 5.44 yards after catch per reception. That's 10th in the league, top
Mm,
10. Meanwhile, though, we talk about the fact that his receiver target separation is 32nd in the league. So this is not an instance of, oh, he's just being carried by his receivers, right? When we see the fact that his deep ball completion percentage is still fifth in the league, it goes to show you that um, in spite of having challenging throws to make, he's making those throws. And then we can add in the fact that this is a guy whose catchable rate on accuracy is fourth in the league. He has an 82.4 percentage on clean ball catchable rate, meaning that on clean pocket passes, right? Clean pocket completion percentage, 77.6, also fourth in the league. This is a guy who thrives off of a clean pocket, and he's getting that, something he did not get with the Giants. The Colts have one of the best offensive lines in the game. So you give him the ability to be able to throw the ball with a clean pocket, help utilize his pressure percentage, his completion percentage under pressure by giving him play action looks. I mean, this is not a guy who's just getting, you know, bad opportunity or is basically just getting easy throws because his offensive line is godly. He's also a guy whose completion percentage is 66.7, top 10 in the league on blitz completion percentage. All of this goes to show me that this is all about the scheme. This is about giving him the best looks possible and just letting him be himself, which goes to show me that at his best self, he is a very good quarterback. And this goes to the fact of the matter is Shane Steichen is a good coach. And if we're talking about the way he handled Anthony Richardson, looking back, this is a bad indictment on Anthony Richardson. The fact that he was pretty much bottom of the league, bottom 10 in as far as eligible quarterbacks, 1 to 40 in pretty much every stat, accuracy, clean pocket, blitz package, whatever, under pressure. That goes to show me just how bad Anthony Richardson is. And that is not a good look. When we look at the fact that Shane Steichen has made Joe Flacco look good, he's made Gardner Minshew look like a potential franchise quarterback when he went back to the Raiders and sucked. Now he's the backup on the Chiefs. We can see what he might look like at the end of the year if he ever gets a chance to play. He made Daniel Jones look good. So to me, this goes to show me how bad Anthony Richardson, and that's the biggest question mark as far as the remainder of the season. And we'll see as far as can Daniel Jones continue this. But to me, that's the most interesting headline about this start of the NFL season. I do want to move on, though, because we did talk about the Packers earlier, and this is a very intriguing conversation that Akilesh and I were having when the Micah Parsons trade went down. Um, it is the introduction in a lot of NFL teams on three pass rushers, three edge rushing, pass rushing presences, and usually one or two interior defensive linemen. Um, Generally, more of an emphasis essentially on the pass rushing, on the edge rushing position than the interior D line, and not necessarily a traditional 3-4 or 4-3 look that you would usually see. And we wanted to kind of discuss why that has become the case, both from a business standpoint and a schematic standpoint. So, Akilesh, I'll give the floor to you to start.
yeah, okay, from a business standpoint, I think the sports management guy can take care of this. From a side of By the way, when is he coming in?
Who?
The sports management guy? I'm joking, it's you. Okay.
Uh,
From a standpoint of schematics is really where I can speak a little bit, I guess. Um, so when you guys look at the NFL right now, even 5 years ago or 2 years ago, right, when you look at really the birth of this came with Brandon Staley's Chargers and the Dallas Cowboys, with Micah Parsons just being newly ignited there, right? It really started from there because what you saw was back. Micah Parsons was never supposed to be a defensive end. He was supposed to be an inside linebacker.
mhm.
That's the way he played in college. He's really never played downright defensive lineman or outside linebacker. He's only played middle linebacker. So when you put him at an edge position, everybody was kind of shocked because no one expected that, right? We have to remember he was not drafted as a defensive end. So when he came here and then there was introduction of him being the defensive end, things started changing. Okay, linebackers at that size, at that frame, can still be ends, but they can dominate to that skill. So then people started going, especially in college. If you look at Georgia, you look at Boston College, before the defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers, he was the head coach at Boston. You look at what he did there, a lot of similarities on that end. Bring in guys that are linebacker size that may not be, the most built per se, but guys who can go out there and ball from a defensive line standpoint. Now, the method Yash is talking about, I don't know if I can go whiteboard and everything on this, but
I can put up the whiteboard. Hold up.
oh, I think I can. So apologies for what I'm about to draw here because I'm not going to. I don't have a pen, so it'll be ugly. But if we go with, let's see, this works. Okay, I see. If we go with the baseline of right five down defense alignment, you got a quarterback, running back, then whatever receivers you have here. We're just gonna go with an easy twins formation. What used to happen before was you would have a defensive lineman here, maybe a tackle here, and then two edges here. That's what happened when Micah was there, right? You're gonna have that. They might run some stunts this way, bring an edge here, bring an edge here. Linebacker can blitz inside over here. Another linebacker is probably going to be safety coverage over there. Strong safety might come down over here. Free safety. And wait, one thing we have to remember: the NFL nowadays is a pure cover two strategy, right? Cover two from a simple concept is this: the cornerbacks are going to play. They're going to play into flat coverage, as we call it, which means if I take the field as this, right, the cornerbacks are going to take majority of the squares that I'm drawing here, newly minted squares, and then the safeties predominantly are going to take the upper circle, right? In this case, what's happening is the safety is playing down, or sometimes he could be playing up. Strong safety is what most of the time, at least in Brandon Staley's offense, they refer to as the star, a position that could be played in any time frame, anywhere they wanted to. Mistake he made was making Derwin James the star instead of, or making Derwin James the free safety instead of allowing him to be the star. So that came in, right? And then from there, what started happening was people started to realize if we just think about it from a scientific standpoint, if a guy is down, right, against an offensive lineman who is up, who has the advantage leverage? The offensive lineman, he's up. He's gonna be able to get a quicker stance. From you to lift your body up and then bring the legs and everything and then put full force, already the amount of force that you're transferring to get an erect frame to go towards this offensive lineman, you're losing so much energy into just attacking this guy, right? That's why when you looked at Lawrence Taylor, one of the main reasons why they were just so surprised by him was simply because he stood like this. His back was bent over. His eyes were directly looking at the quarterback who was about to throw the ball, and the offensive lineman was right here. So when he stood up, Lawrence Taylor was already an athletic freak. So because of that, he had the leverage and immediately could attack. The one thing we cannot disagree with is the fact that in today's NFL, athleticism, strength, athleticism purely is a lot more. I mean, if you Miles Garrett Have you seen this man? This man could jump into a swimming pool and he doesn't need to crawl up. He literally jumps out of a swimming pool. Tristan Wirfs. I mean, the man jumped out of a swimming pool. Uh, who's the guy on? Is it Tristan Wirfs, the guy, the tackle on the Bucks?
Yeah.
Right? He jumped out of a swimming pool. A 385-pound offensive tackle.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I was shocked when I saw that. So, athleticism wise, they're a lot better. So, what's the deal now? So, to explain it in the simplest way possible, teams are now running a one defensive lineman, three edge concept, which is one defensive lineman, most likely the nose tackle or another. They go an edge here, an edge here, and an edge here. Edge from a standpoint of replaceability, right? Because before, what was happening was these guys would just be tackles. And the tackles will not, so if this is position one, two, three, four, right? The tackle will not go to one, and the edge will not go to two. Because the reason why the guards are a lot bigger than the tackles, right? They're going to be, and because of that, the edges are going to get smothered. That's what happened before. The difference now is tackles and edges look all the same, right? From an athleticism standpoint, they can just attack from anywhere. So what's happening now? If you guys saw the Green Bay Packers, especially if you see the Green Bay Packers, Micah Parsons is playing here. He's playing here. He's playing on the nose. He's playing right outside leverage on the left side, right side, doesn't matter. He's playing everywhere. Why? Because he has that much leverage, as do all defensive ends. They can attack from any standpoint. So one of the most common things you'll see as a result of that is allowing the use of cornerbacks a lot more. When you look at last year, especially, there was a soundbite of um, the Mighty Minter defense with Jesse Minter. He was on, mic'd up with the Chargers. If you look at the YouTube channel, and you could see him literally saying dime, nickel, 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 nickel. I'm like, dude, how many times y'all gotta yell out nickel? We know it, but if you listen to it more, you kind of understand. The Chargers have run this defense, I think, perfectly. So they got a young inside defensive lineman in Jamare Caldwell, who could be honestly defensive rookie of the year. Man's playing amazing. You got two edge rushers on the outside here: Khalil Mack, Bud Dupree, what you will. You got Tui also, so he can play, and then you got another edge here. Now, I think really the best defensive game plan in the league right now is at the hands of the Minnesota Vikings. Reason why is you guys look at Brett Coleman's video on the um, I think he talked about
It was Ben
uh,
Johnson and Brian Flores. Yeah.
Brian Flores, that video. I mean, it's I think the best football video that's out there, right? When you look at it, he talks about a concept known as fire zone. Fire zone is the way essentially football analytics and football players get pressure on a quarterback, right? And that's not just using these four guys. The point is with the linebackers, right? So if you got a middle linebacker and a will, this is the classic setup. The way Flores runs his defense is he takes these middle linebackers and he makes them on a blitz type technique. He pulls a corner here and he puts out on a technique. So if you're looking at this, right? Uh, so you have 11 players on the field, right? So when you're in this type of concept and you got all these players positioned at once, what's going to happen is the corners are going to play here, strong safety is going to play there, free safety is going to be there. Essentially, what you're doing is you're going to play a cover three concept, right? A cover three concept is essentially this here. The corner, strong safety, and free safety are all playing on the same field level. What Flores does is he plays a cover four concept, where essentially what he does is there we go. What he does is he's gonna play the corners are gonna go flat or just maybe sub flat, if you will. The strong safeties will take the upper flat, which is kind of play a cover two. Difference is the linebacker or the nickelback are gonna play the sub level flat as well, right? The cover four, the
And
corners are also gonna
Akilesh,
take the
if
deep end. The corners are
uh,
also gonna take the deep end.
Akilesh, if I may add in this case, there are three reasons, especially with the Minnesota Vikings, as to why it's incredibly effective for them. Number one, well, it's three players. Byron Murphy, who plays on the outside, who has a lot of versatility as a nickelback and as far as a free safety. So he's
Mm-hmm.
one of the more versatile secondary players in the entire league. Josh Metellus, who might be the most versatile player in the league, who can play pretty much anywhere from a free safety, strong safety inside the box, nickel, boundary cornerback, but he's also played as far as 11 different positions for the Minnesota Vikings over the last 3 seasons,
Right.
including edge rusher and linebackers. So this is a guy who has so much ability to move around and be in that shallow lane, as you mentioned. And then Andrew Van Ginkel, who's probably one of the best interior D line slash edge rushers. He's undersized for an interior D line, even though he's played from that. Brian Flores gives him several opportunities to stunt inside and find crevices in the interior offensive line to hit a quarterback. If you notice a lot of his sacks dating back to his days in Miami, they usually come from the inside, but he's also one of the best as far as dropping back and getting picks at that. Andrew, those three players in general give Brian
Yeah.
Flores a lot of this versatility.
But you know what it is, Yash? It's very similar to what's happened in basketball. It's positionless variety,
Exactly.
right? When you look at the corners here, when you look at the strong safeties, free safeties, they can play each other's position. And that's really what's allowed for this three defensive lineman concept. Now, with this concept, what happens is, especially when the players are on a stand-up format against an offensive lineman that's on a stand-up format, they can attack him with a lot more power, a lot more aggression, a lot more speed, a lot more everything. And as a result of all of that, you got a big guy like this. He's going to attract a lot of attention. And you blitz another guy like this. Offensive linemen now, they don't know what to do. That's where you start seeing the concept of extra offensive linemen come into play. But if that happens, coverage wise, your deal becomes a lot easier. The quarterbacks could run, but still, you got so much coverage over here. The cornerbacks could still be sub flat. They could still have the coverage over there to go. So because of that, what's happening is it's allowing for a lot more leverage in coverage, but also allows for an increased pressure on a quarterback. I think this is the way the league's going to evolve now. And the point I will make to all of this is this. For those who have seen 70s highlights, people won't believe me when I say this. Wide receivers used to be like this when a cornerback was like this in the 70s. Believe it or not, they would start from a position of how a defensive lineman start, get up, run a route when a cornerback could literally tackle you when you started, and they would be able to catch balls. That's why people like Fred Biletnikoff are so underrated. They had to do that stuff. It was when Mike Irving, when you look at Michael Irvin, the playmaker, you look at Jerry Rice, you look at all those guys who started this stand-up position. That's when the receiver was allowed to get a lot more yards, go deep, go inside, go back slants, right? It allowed them to have that sort of versatility. Just like that, the defensive ends have come to a point where they can just go, bam, attack it. So when we look at a defense from that standpoint, right, it's essentially allowing guys to take advantage from number one, right? When we look before we look at X's and O's, we have to understand the human body, right? If you're upwards, you'll have a lot more leverage towards a guy rather than getting down, then getting up, then moving towards it. You're using a lot more energy and just getting yourself up. Rather, when you're going right at them in the face. I mean, the first time we ever saw this, Yash, in the NFL,
When?
the Brandon Staley and all used it, a lot more. 2019 AFC Championship, Pats versus um, Chiefs. That's the first time we ever saw this. Watch this thing again and again and again. This was the game where you saw it. I'll lay it down. You got five offensive linemen, right? Chiefs are running offense. They got Kareem Hunt on the downside here, Tyreek here, Travis Kelsey over here. Got a couple of other random dudes over here, playing maybe the Z there. You're playing some sort of formation like this. Tyreek's going over here, inside back. Travis is running the over go route, and then Z's going to hit the little small slant over here. If that's the route concept, this is what Bill Belichick did. I'm going to put a middle linebacker there. I'm going to put a Will linebacker there, a Sam linebacker there, an edge there, and an edge there. Oh, by the way, all standing right up. No one was sitting down. Everybody was standing right up. They went again and again and again at it. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull up the stats from that game right now. Because if I'm not wrong, when it came to that game, obviously there was a lot of, you know, um, I mean, the Chiefs did get absolutely. The Chiefs did play really well that game, 31 points, I believe. But at the end of the day, that was not as much on the defense as it was just mistakes that were made, right? You got to remember, till the third quarter, the score was 17-7. They scored 24 points in the fourth quarter, right? Now, why that came? Well, it was from Damian Williams. Damian Williams, 23-yard pass. Sony Michelle, Damian Williams, 2-yard rush. I think it was a field goal again. So there was a lot of things that went into there. But look at Patrick Mahomes that day. I believe it was he had 295 for three. I believe he sacked four times. There we go. He was sacked four times, fumbled it once, four penalties on it too. The other thing is penalties have been increasing a lot more on the offensive line. Why does that happen? These guys are standing right up. So the urge to just be like, oh, I got to back up real quick because these guys are literally on their toes. The offensive linemen, they just make so many errors. The Giants had four consecutive offensive lines.
Okay, to be fair though, we have to admit that that was particularly because of one James Guyton, or yeah, James Hudson, if I'm not mistaken,
That's fair,
who
but
was
Yash,
just
that's fair,
incredibly
Yash.
horrible.
But this is the deal. All the linemen that he was facing against, they were all standing right up.
True.
That's the deal. At the end of the day, that's really what it is. So because of that four sacks, I mean,
I'm
Bill
just
Belichick's
saying this.
never.
I'm just saying this as a joke, though. How do you account for what he did as far as slapping the defensive line?
That's true. That's true. I
What's the
mean,
excuse for that?
it is a ding dong at the end of the day. It is. It truly is. Oh, I don't know. I could do this. Okay, sorry. Back to here. When it comes to all that being said, the key premise behind using this type of scheme from a scheme standpoint, a lot more leverage, right? Leverage is going to be a lot more. You're going to be able to attack at a higher pace. You're going to be able to attack more efficiently, and it's going to allow coverage to be easier. You're going to get a lot. You're going to allow the guys to have more time to set themselves to understand what's going on. Because this man here, he's running for his life. So that's the essential premise behind a three edge, one down defensive lineman, along with the premise of a standing up outside linebacker position. So that's where I'm going to stop this year.
I'm gonna add some schematic things just for context on the business standpoint, as far as how these teams kind of outlook. Um, for starters, the response as to why defenses, for starters, went into 3-4s in general, if you want to go into a historical standpoint. But now having this three edge rusher, one defensive line type scheme, a lot comes down to three major reasons on the offensive side of the ball. Number one, the evolution and encouraging of dual threat quarterbacks, right? Just 20 years ago, I mean, even we can go 10 years ago, a guy like Lamar Jackson was treated as an afterthought because of the fact that he was a dual threat quarterback. Now we look at the NFL and we get not just a dual threat quarterback like Lamar, we get so many different iterations of dual threat quarterbacks. We get a guy like Josh Allen, who basically is just a one man wrecking crew. We get a guy like Lamar Jackson, who is either he can throw the ball like he can throw the ball like a playmaking Philip Rivers or Ben Roethlisberger back in his day, or he can run like Randall Cunningham. A lot of people would compare him to a Michael Vick. I wouldn't compare him to Michael Vick. They have two different throwing styles. Michael Vick was
Sure.
more of that rocket arm, but you got that too. Kyler Murray is that. Maybe not to the same degree Michael Vick was, but
Not
still,
close.
same
Yeah.
style. Anthony Richardson, very reminiscent of a Cam Newton as far as his playing style. Is he as good as Cam Newton? Not even close, but that's a different argument. Jalen Hurts. We got Jaden Daniels. All of these different quarterbacks are so different in how they throw and run the ball. So that requires a versatile scheme stand understanding, especially you look at the personnel surrounded around these quarterbacks, right? Jalen Hurts is in a very run heavy offense. So you have to surround yourself with traditional type schemes like the Dallas Cowboys do. This is usually why the Cowboys have the best opportunity on defeating the Eagles every year. And I'll get to that back in a sec. Then you go to the Ravens, and they're very much
Cowboys beating the Eagles?
They're the best team in their division as far as their ability to beat the
Ah,
Eagles on a
okay.
consistent
Fair,
basis.
fair,
Yeah.
fair, fair. Yes.
Right. And that's not just because they're probably the best team in the division outside of the Eagles. That's also because of certain scheme advantages that they have, and I'll get to that. We look at the Ravens and the fact that they're very much focused on running backs and tight ends. You got to have linebackers who are focused on that team, guys who can spy on Lamar Jackson if need be, right? Um, got a guy like Kyler Murray, and you got to have a safety who's always watching him from whatever standpoint it may be, who could drop down in the box. That's why the Niners invested so much in Hufanga at that standpoint instead of a Jaquiski Tart. Why the Seattle Seahawks went and got someone like Julian Love. Why the Rams loved and invested so much into someone like Jalen Ramsey, Jordan Fuller, etc.
True.
Right?
That is true.
Um, the other two standpoints are the running back. Guys like Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara have taken over the league, right? Guys who can not only run the ball at a high level through schemes that help them offensive line wise, but guys who can then start to venture out into the passing game. That includes the investment into a high nickelback position, a high dime position, as we see with a team like the Patriots, investing in Kyle Duggar, etc. And then the third reason is you've seen a lot of evolution in the tight end position with guys such as Travis Kelce, Kyle Pitts, George Kittle, etc., Brock Bowers, right? These three things are incredibly important because for an edge rushing position, the edge rusher position has shown to become the most valuable position by far in the league because of the versatility it provides, right? Back in the day, right, when I started first watching the football in 2013, I keep saying back in the day like I'm an unk. I'm pretty much an unk. I just turned 19. We're about to turn 20 next year, both me and Akilesh. Um, but yeah, when it comes to this edge rushing position, it's become so much more valuable. Back in 2012, 2013, the standard of the league defensively was the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks, which was led by a physical cornerback such as Richard Sherman and two safety pairing in Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas that fed off of each other. And the reason why I mention this is because Cam Chancellor was a guy who was versatile in the sense he could drop down in the box, he could stay outside, he could be a side to side range, he could be a linebacker if you need to be. Earl Thomas, though, was the main reason why that was able to work because of his range, because of his ability to play against guys who are bigger than him. We've seen him hit guys like Rob Gronkowski and really put fear in them, right? That's what made that team work. The thing is now we're seeing the size and the physicality of safeties. I wouldn't say physicality, but the size certainly go down in safeties because this game has become a lot of speed oriented because of those running backs, because of those tight ends, because of those receivers. We have a guy like Tyler Warren and Harold Fannin. These are two guys who are 250 and 60 pounds respectively, who are running 4.6, 4.7 speed times. We wouldn't see that from tight ends back in the day, right? We got guys like Tucker Kraft who thrive off of screen passes and basically being that type of player in offenses. Guys like Brock Bowers, same thing. So with an edge rusher position, it allows you to kind of move your players around without really compromising your secondary because how valuable the front seven is, and especially the pass rush. And we see teams invest in that, especially such as the 49ers, the Baltimore Ravens, etc., in different ways, right? The Ravens from a 3-4 standpoint, the 49ers from a 4-3 standpoint. And that was especially the case when this became prevalent in around 2018, 2019 for a team like the Patriots. And before I say this, this is the reason why Bill Belichick is considered a genius and one of the greatest coaches of all time. I heard this some idiot the other day on a YouTube short basically talking about, oh, Bill Belichick's not even a top 10 quarterback or top 10 head coach. Just shut the hell up, man. Like it doesn't, you don't, I get the 6 Super Bowls might be partially because Tom Brady, but he's still one of the greatest coaches of all time because of this type of impacting. Jimmy Konzelman is one of the greatest head coaches of all time, one of the top 25 greatest head coaches. I guarantee you've never heard of the man because he's never won a ring Super Bowl wise. This is what Bill Belichick is known for. And this is especially prevalent because he thrived off of having guys who played in multiple schemes. He could run a 4-3 and a 3-4 the next play. It wasn't a standard base defensive scheme for him. He had dimes and nickelbacks such as Patrick Chung, Kyle Duggar, Devin McCourty, and he evolved that defense over time, right? But the two most prevalent guys in that standpoint were Dante Hightower and Kyle Van Noy, right? These were
Yeah.
guys who could play aside as pass rushers, but were known as these middle linebackers. And why that's incredibly important is from a business standpoint, if I don't want to pay a defensive line or an edge rusher position, which usually costs upward of 20, 25 million, what do? I just pay them like a linebacker. Now, with the Micah Parsons, you can't exactly do that because Micah Parsons is one of one, right? But the standard still holds for a lot of players in the league. If you're running a 4-3 like the Dallas Cowboys do, you need a guy who's a do-it-all linebacker, a Demarion Overshown. A guy like the Niners have is Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, these types of players, right? But if you're running a 3-4, which is becoming more and more popular in the NFL, you have to have a guy who is a third edge rusher who can sometimes play an interior D line, maybe sometimes a linebacker, right? In the case of the Packers, they got both. Luke Van Ness can play inside as far as interior D lineman. We'll see if he ends up becoming still prevalent as far as his presence for the Packers. He was a first round pick 2 years ago, and to no fault of his own, he hasn't really gotten an opportunity of shot to shine. Micah Parsons is more that linebacker role, but this is a Packers team who's done this for years, right? In 2019, they signed Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith to big money, and that same year, that same draft, they ended up taking Rashawn Gary 12th overall. Now, Rashawn Gary is the longest tenured Packers edge rusher as it stands of today, right? So this is a team that is mostly known for that. Now, in the case of the Minnesota Vikings, we mentioned earlier their need for versatility in a lot of those ends. They have a guy like Josh Metellus drop back down into coverage. You need a safety. In the past, it was Cam Bynum. I don't know who their free safety is now as it stands, but it could still be Harrison Smith. But you have these guys who move around. Having three edge rushers is incredibly important. The other reason why it's incredibly important, because of this emphasis around edge rushers, the edge rusher position has become incredibly saturated, which is very beneficial to teams. Now, instead of having to rely on drafting a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt, I can just recreate them in the aggregate, as the old Moneyball saying goes. I can basically just get sign a free agent or two that can make my team that much better, like the Vikings did with Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard, right? I can trade for a guy like the Giants did with Brian Burns while still having Azeez Ojulari. I can invest in depth at that position through second and third round picks, as the Steelers do usually, as the Broncos have done in the past. Or I can just go out and trade for a guy who just checks all the boxes, like Micah Parsons. But what it comes down to for a lot of these teams is I would prefer only having to pay $15 million on three different players. So now I have three guys who are Pro Bowl level players. In the case of the Vikings, Jonathan Grenard was a Pro Bowler. Andrew Van Ginkel was a Pro Bowler. And in the case of Dallas Turner, he has that potential. He's a guy who they invested a first round pick in a couple years ago. That's that third edge rushing position. What this does is create a succession plan for a lot of teams, right? When Zadarius Smith becomes too expensive, all right, I'll just move in Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary is a career year. Now he's the important part. With the Minnesota Vikings, if Jonathan Grenard becomes too expensive or Andrew Van Ginkel becomes too expensive, move in Dallas Turner. In the case of the
That's very
Dolphins,
interesting, Josh. I've not thought about it from that standpoint of um, well, I think we talk about a lot from a quarterback standpoint, right? Investing in youth, and then kind of like the Michael Penix situation where you
correct.
keep Cousins. I mean, what they do to Kirk Cousins is not exactly the best formula of success, right? Kind of really tricking your player in and giving him that much amount of money to just be a sideline joke.
Right.
But I mean, he should be happy as anything. He doesn't have to do any work, and he's got all that money for himself. So the at the end of the day, though, right? Your point that really does make sense is it's really how the entire league treats any position. Invest in the youth, allow them to learn from experience, and then just let them play.
Not
That's
just
really
in
what
any
Patrick Mahomes
position though.
was.
Not just any position though. The reason why it's incredibly important for the interior for the edge rushing position is because we're seeing now positional value becomes so important in the draft, right? Nobody drafts a running back, linebacker, safety anymore because those positions are essentially dead because of the fact that the run game has diminished, right? Unless you have a Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry, which you could just go and sign in free agency, as both players did end up signing in free agency with their team. You don't really need to go and get one of those players in the first round in a lot of cases. But you get an edge rusher position. He's on a rookie deal. Now you extend him. You have two free agents, guys. Now you can move away from one. And it's just this revolving door at edge rusher position, which is further benefited by the fact that this edge rusher position has now become so good as far as the depth of the position in the entire league. There's so many good edge rushers that we don't even really talk about, right? Guys like George Karlaftis, Will McDonald, Leatu Latu, I mean, the list goes on. I can't think of more off the top of my head, but you get what I'm saying. So now with a lot of these teams, as far as their interior D linemen, the rarity around getting an interior D lineman who makes such an emphasis is not necessarily needed because most teams don't have a Chris Jones. They don't have an Aaron Donald or a Dexter Lawrence. But what they do have is a guy who can still act as one of those guys as far as just being a nose tackle, right? There are a lot more interior nose tackle positions that are elite than we think. Guys like Lawrence, but we can also mention Vita Vea, Terrell Slayton, DJ Reader, Braden Fisk, DeForest Buckner's not good, but even his teammate Grover Stewart, as I mentioned, the three defensive linemen on the Broncos, right? And what this comes down to me, for example, this comes back to the Los Angeles Rams, who I keep mentioning this team. The 2021 Rams are one of the most impactful teams of all time, in my opinion, based on how much they changed the game as far as different business decisions Les Snead made. The fact that they had a guy like Aaron Donald who could just carry that interior D line, what they started doing is just relying on fellow nose tackles around. So now, whether you have an Aaron Donald or not, and now we're seeing the Rams kind of move back to getting Braden Fisk, Kobe Turner, but they go and get a guy like Puna Ford, right? What we're noticing now is these nose tackle positions have become especially important as far as just holding their ground. Now you can just get a bunch of depth in that position. You're talking about the size at the offensive line position, the overall athleticism. You get defensive line who can just kind of stuff up the middle. That allows for more versatility for the edge rusher positions because now it allows them to move around and get in places where otherwise defensive line are just kind of forcing offensive line to not be able to disengage and be able to stop a Micah Parsons or an Andrew Van Ginkel who comes inside. So that's incredibly important from that standpoint because at the end of the day, an Ashawn Robinson on the Rams, a Greg Gaines on the Rams, right? A guy, Kalijah Cansey, Logan Hall, who were former first-round picks for the Buccaneers, they're not guys who you necessarily need to extend that much, right? Even a guy like Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, right? As great as they are, the Eagles moved on from Javon Hargrave to get him at Javon Hargrave's prime, right? Easily because of the fact that not just that they were that good, but the fact of the matter that they were first round picks who could be gotten for cheap. And they were very good first round picks at that. But you also were willing to let go of Milton Williams to be able to invest more in the depth because Milton Williams at the end of the day got paid $26 million per year. If he didn't get paid $26 million per year and was just a rotational piece, I think the Eagles would have stuck with him, right? So it's this just overall investment in the front seven, but specifically making sure that the position that has more value and more players, good players in the league, gets that type of investment. And that's essentially what the edge rusher position has become from that standpoint.
I don't think I could have articulated it any better. I think this is your best take that you've ever made on 3 seasons on the show. I think the way you went about it, honestly. I mean, I'm gaslighting it, but like seriously, I mean, it really is that good of a take, honestly. I've never thought from a business standpoint this is the way they're approaching it because we hear the quarterback position be heard from this standpoint way too much. And you kind of just feel like, oh, they're just talking about it again and again. But truly it is, right? Look at it. as more than ever, I think now we're seeing that experience has paid off so much for all quarterbacks. Daniel Jones, the Joe Flacco's of the world, the Sam Donalds of the world. I mean, maybe he's not what he was last season, but he's definitely still a really good quarterback. So I think from that standpoint, allowing them to learn and then grow with that learning, right? Patrick Mahomes has said on many occasions the best thing that's ever happened in his career was to be benched his first rookie season and be behind Alex Smith and then understand what it is to be a quarterback under Andy Reid and then just go execute. And that's what he's done.
But
So,
you know what it is, Akilish, is the fact that you need these do-it-all kind of linebackers for this to work as far as the 3-4-4-3 flexibility. When you
yeah,
have a guy like Micah Parsons, he's just one of one, so you go and get him. But what Micah Parsons really allows this Packers team to do is, in spite of the fact that he's being paid 47 million, which is rare for this overall business outlook, he just allows the Packers to have more flexibility and more depth
versatility,
at that position. Whereas with a team like the Vikings, it's just really a matter of being able to kind of keep their flexibility while still not having to pay any player. Micah
sure.
Parsons is just that double down of the specific philosophy defensively that the Packers have. And it makes sense because he's one of the best edge rusher positions. And there's a reason why now the Packers look like one of the best defenses in the league, if not the best
If not
defense.
the best, exactly.